Welcome everyone to another episode, another podcast really, of our parallel barkings, woof woof. My name is Larry Backer and I'm here with my daughter,
Ariana Backer.
Yay, and we are here to talk today. We're in the middle of, as most of you who will be watching this not in real time, but close to the time it's posted, will know that we are in the middle of the following the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, and of the and by the way, I've been told that that you have to be very careful. Everything is now very sensitive, and apparently for some people, identifying the country as the Ukraine is a signal, which I had not been aware of, but now I'm going to share with everyone, is a signal of a reference to that area, not as a state, but as a region of the Soviet Union, and thus might be a secret signal of pro-Russian invasion sympathies.
Interesting.
I had no idea. Right, so if you say the Ukraine instead of Ukraine, so Ukraine is now, at least for some people, and I don't know how true this is, or if it's just three people who happen to get themselves interested enough in this to communicate with me. So apparently there is a difference between identifying it as the Ukraine, which is a non-sovereign region historically attached to the Soviets in the period before that, as opposed to Ukraine, which refers to, I guess, the either the pre-9th century and the post-1989 or 1990. I forget exactly when the current Declaration of Independence was made and the state of Ukraine became sovereign, but anyway, for those of you who are interested in the sensitivities that even what appears to people who are unsure or who had no idea, including me, that this is a thing, right? So the Ukraine is now very sensitive, and apparently for some people will suggest a pro-Russian invasion support, where saying Ukraine does not. So there it is. And we certainly don't mean to convey things one way or another, but that's not our point today. I'm going to throw out something for you, Ariana. And this is in part because we tend to be very musical beings, and this is a musical story rather than a story about the tragedies that are going on in the eastern fringes of Europe. And the story is as follows. There's a 20-year-old, a pianist, a Russian pianist, and I'm going to mess up his name, so please forgive me. Russian pianist by the name of Alexander Malofeev, which I think is as close as I'm going to get to pronouncing his name, who was on this is in the middle of March 2022, is on a tour of Canada, when he had his performances that had been scheduled with the Montreal Symphony Orchestra struck from the schedule after a protest about featuring a pianist, a 20-year-old pianist from Russia. It's not clear that he was wearing Z's, and you know, Z is now the, talk about sensitivities, Z is now the signal that that the Russians have been wearing, and Russian sympathizers all over the world, to indicate I guess, a pro-invasion as well as the invading force symbol. But you know, he's nowhere connected to that, and I'm not sure what his political stance is. And actually,
he had actually,
he has been quite vocal, and courageously so, considering that he could wind up in jail in Russia. He has been quite vocal in his opposition to the invasion. So you've got a kid who's 20 years old, who's a pianist touring Canada, who has quite courageously on Facebook declared his opposition to the war and then have his performance canceled because people found it excruciating to have someone from Russia perform.
Well, yeah,
What
I
do you
mean,
think?
this was the, and that's the thing. It's the inability. That's what I find interesting, is people's inability, or many people's inability, or the difficulty many of us have separating a people from the
A person.
situational leadership, the leadership that their leadership is putting them in, or what is actually going on, even if that individual has, as you said, heroically declared publicly that they are specifically against the decisions that have been made. That doesn't matter. I mean, for instance, when Trump was in office, there were plenty of people who spoke out against the decisions that were made, but that didn't make anybody else around the world less apt to think that those decisions were not American decisions.
But no, and here I'll beg to differ. I think that this happens all the time.
It absolutely happens all the time, and that doesn't make it right, though. It's just
No,
unfortunate.
agreed. But it's amazing. So I've been trying to think about why, and one of the reasons may be there may be a couple of reasons. One, it's very hard for anyone to take out their sense of outrage or their sense of wrongness about all of this on the people who may be most publicly responsible, right? The leadership in Russia, or the people who are complicit, and blah, blah, blah. And so you're going to want to reach out to whomever, right? See, the leader taints the nation, irrespective of whatever their personal characteristics are, and that you are effectively now collectively guilty of decisions that are undertaken by the leadership and those who are willing to actually implement it. This certainly happened, the hysteria, and sometimes quite tragically, right? Recall the internment of the Japanese in the U.S. after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. There are all kinds. That's the Americans. There isn't a space in the world that hasn't seen something like this. But it is kind of beyond its tragedy. It is kind of interesting that, in fact, what we're doing is incarnating the wrongness that we feel that is being undertaken by a leader through this entity on everyone who has some connection, and the kid is Russian, some connection with that now incarnated space. And so part of us feels, well, yeah, the Russians ought to suffer, and then part of us feels, and by us I don't mean you and me, but part of us feels, well, this is, aren't we perpetrating another wrong by punishing this kid? And it's not even a question about, whether the kid is now waving around a flag with a big Z on it saying, yay, we won't stop until we've reduced Kyiv to rubble. Quite the opposite. But there it is. So what should we do with the kid? What should we do with the Montreal Symphony?
I mean, well, see, and this is it's a hilarious or frustrating, depending on how you look at it, especially when you realize they're trying the symphony orchestra is trying so desperately to signal that they have a solid understanding of the current political economy of the situation, but rather than being really thoughtful and deliberate about their situation, and this is my opinion, rather being thoughtful. I mean, I think they were according to their own stance and where they're coming from and the money that they need to make and how and where they're coming from, of course, in their current perspective. I mean, I think the arts organizations in Canada instead were very scared and reactionary in their decision making.
Or mercenary, perhaps, because this is Michael Tilson Thomas, who is, if I remember correctly,
I don't think it was his decision. I don't think it was Michael. It was not. I don't think his specific decision making, because they have a very strong relationship with the. No. I honestly don't think it was specifically.
Yeah, but we're in a world. But we're in a world of signaling, right? So you're talking quite correctly that and certainly in the West, this is true. We have this mania for signaling. Well, fine. Does the Montreal Symphony have the monopoly on signaling? Certainly Michael Tilson Thomas could have signaled himself as well, but instead, and it's not clear whether he's done or not. The article doesn't suggest that that we've looked at suggests that he's expending a whole lot of effort on his own personal signaling, right? And yeah, and I tend to buy that, that personally this makes no sense, and probably not to him either. He does say that he retains his connection with the pianists, and he calls it an excellent collaboration. But now he's beginning to sound like an administrator rather than an artist. But
I'm sure they're all scared.
Yeah, in a sense he is. But maybe what we're talking about here is the quantification of, and that's why I called it mercenary, the quantification of effect of protests on the Montreal Symphony's bottom line.
Yes, that's exactly right. And they actually, I think somebody actually said something that almost revealed that directly. There was some sort of quote that said, I think it was at the end of the article I read from NPR. Yes, the Vancouver organization, the Recital Society, said something like, the truth is that many in our city don't have the appetite for this concert at this time, ... So, right. I mean, you're basically saying nobody wants to pay the money. We're not going to sell tickets.
Or make the donation.
Or make the donations, yes, for this artist right now. I mean, they're going to have other artists performing at the same concert series,
but let's take that a step further. So think about what they've done. These are all people who are decrying the human rights violations that are being done on the collective, right? The Ukrainian people. And of course, as usual, everyone loves to talk about these things in abstract, because abstractions are really easy. One can always get on the highest horse in the universe when one is dealing with abstractions. But in order to do that, they've now essentially they have obliterated the humanity of this kid.
Individual kid who's trying to stand up for the humanity.
Who's trying to stand up for humanity and differentiate. Oh, but we we can't be bothered with that. And in a sense, we are now compounding the collective human rights violations of the Russian military under the direction of its leadership, right, by effectively erasing the individual personhood of this poor kid, who is...
We're stating it doesn't really matter what you say. It doesn't matter. You could say anything. The fact that you are Russian is the problem. And what made it even more upsetting was the fact that the representative, I think the name of the person was Pascal Wimut, said something about, yes, it would seem that there are obviously conclusions, no problem can be solved by war, people cannot be judged by their nationality.
Right, unless of course you happen to be a 20-year-old Russian pianist trying to play in the Montreal Symphony.
Right.
And then we can say, well, you're also a casualty of war. Not that we want to directly confront the Russian army where they're doing the most damage, but we figure, well, if we absolutely positively refuse to send any kind of military aid to the Russians, then we can do the next best thing by finding some 20-year-old pianist playing in Montreal. And that's where our theater of war is, right? And in a sense, this is really quite extraordinary.
Oh, excuse me,
Well,
no,
not extraordinary, but quite, because it isn't extraordinary, and that's the pathetic thing here.
the actual quote from Ouimet was, "We continue, the OSM feels that it would be inappropriate to receive Mr. Malofeev or Fev this week." Sorry, I am also a terrible person for not being able to pronounce it. But we continue, however, to believe in the importance of maintaining relationships with artists of all nationalities who embrace messages of peace and hope.
But again, think about how this statement is just such a, that's why I love administrators and the
Right?
bureaucracy, the language of the bureaucrat.
I'm learning so much.
We are blissfully eager to erase the individual humanity of these people, right? And I'm going to use that term quite specifically, right? That's a dog whistle. These people, precisely because we are so desperate to affirm the humanity of people. Well, it's extraordinary. And the extraordinary thing isn't that he's doing this and he has no sense of what he's doing. The extraordinary thing really is that he's completely not just oblivious, but completely unconcerned effectively about using traditional racist, ethnocentric, et cetera, tropes, that is reducing this poor kid to an essence that he chooses to value more than anything else, his Russianness. This kid is not just Russian. He's a pianist, he's a male, he's 20, and you can use all kinds of different lenses, but no, they've chosen to do this when they hyper privilege it, and then they throw this into this kettle, and the kettle is meant to not have anything to do with him because they're all very sorry that it had to be him, but to the greater glory of the patriotic, human rights affirming Montreal Symphony Orchestra, which is just, I was going to say a hoot, but
is it?
just theater of the most.
Yes, I was going to say it is entertainment because we're talking about it now. I mean,
thank God they speak French in Quebec. Then they'll have a much more refined sense of the absurdist character of what they're doing. One can, if one wanted to be Ionesco, for example, one can build a play. We're not waiting for Godot now. We are doing a kind of horrible, kind of farcical, absurdist playwriting here, all in the name of just the great and the good.
and it's really surprising. Is it surprising to me that it seems as though they don't see the huge paradox of their actions? I mean, do they not? Or is it that it's just that they don't care? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, from the story itself has an interesting thing to say about that, right? We've talked about him as Russian, but it wasn't even Russian. What they brought out was that the reason they're canceling him is because he is, and I quote, he is a Russian cultural product.
No, oh my goodness, I said
talk about the objectification. So he's, we're on the the kid is not human. He's barely 20 years old and he's already lost his humanity. He isn't a human pianist who has this own personal deeply culturally embedded, but he's a globalist at the same time, blah, blah, blah. No, he is now not a human, but
He's a tool.
He's a cultural product. Worse than a tool, he's an object. He's a cultural product. And that therefore, when the good burgers of Montreal go to hear him play, what they're really doing is consuming a Russian cultural product, which would then sit in their craw, I guess. And this is just, it's even weirder in that sense. So that
Yes, and the fact that that was so readily accepted by the organization, by the orchestra, by an arts organization, that yes, our artists are objects. You are correct. You are right. Let's go with that and accept that and make it a mantra. Let's make it status quo. Let's make our artists objects, as if we don't already.
Although I'm actually quite pleased too, in a kind of ironically, now I'm going to be farcical since we're in the this is where it comes. So I guess that means that Josephine Baker was an American cultural product in Paris. And to some extent she was, and she'll always be an American. And also,
Yes.
and of course, Josephine Baker, who was an extraordinary resistance fighter and probably one of the most courageous French women of American origin to have lived in the last century. She might have looked a little cross-eyed maybe at her reduction to an American product, but of course, because she's African American, it would have been worse and probably much more vicious. And so one wonders, or an American female product. And so again, you walk down this road and no good comes from it, because all it does is unmask your own propensity to this kind of ethno-racial reductionism that is precisely the things that supposedly very sensitive organizations in North America are at the forefront of fighting. Well, they are until it's inconvenient to do it, and then they're going to make the easy decision, which is the ethno-cultural objectifying reductionism that gives them bennies.
And that makes people feel good. That makes some people feel good.
Oh no, I don't open that door. So right, and
Oh,
that's
I did.
horrifying. Right, you did, and that's horrifying, because then you're suggesting that indeed even our most sensitive equality warriors always have that back door into these orgies of doing precisely what they condemn in a bunch of other people.
Oh, but they do,
and
that's exactly what. And that's the problem.
You open the door and there I go, and and no, I give no quarter here, because I think that it's only fair that one treats them, are fallen and sinning justice warriors, the way one would a ultra right-wing preacher who is caught getting a happy ending from a male masseuse, having just come from a church meeting where he's going on about the evils of same-sex and out-of-marriage sexual activity. Both of them are engaging in the same sorts of conveniences, which I think if we're going to hold them to what they mean to hold us, then they have to be more sensitive than us about maintaining compliance with the rules that they would have imposed. But everyone has heard this before. It's just every once in a while, it's nice to remind people.
Yes, do what I say, not as I do.
Yeah. So what do we do with because of course we have the power to do this. What do we do with the good people of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra?
Sigh really hard, realize that the decision was short-sighted. I mean, it would have been, I mean, in this case, it would have been nice to showcase a respected artist from the now perceived opposition who supports Ukraine.
Yeah, you're nice. I would punish them.
Who
Especially.
said I was done?
Oh, sorry. Then let's hear your punishment.
If I were I honestly, when I first read this, because I'm up my butt, I was thinking if I was an American arts organization, I would immediately jump on this artist and ask for him to perform with us, like now.
Yeah,
And
well,
why
that
not?
helps the kid. That helps the kid, but it's
And make an announcement.
Montreal. But it's the Montreal Symphony that requires, as the Chinese would say,
Oh, so you need
rectification.
you want okay, yes, I understand
No,
that.
no, I
Okay,
don't
so
want
tell me what you would
reparations.
do. You
I don't
want
want
punishment.
reparations.
You
Yeah,
want
no, I want a clarifying and positive a rectification. to get
rectification.
them,
Yes, I understand that.
but I absolutely agree with you. The kids should, people should try to figure out a way of making the kid whole, even if these poor fallen humans at the Montreal Symphony will not.
But I also think in some ways that would embarrass the Montreal Symphony, which I hope it would do. I mean, that would be one of
artists
my.
are embarrassed. Artists are embarrassed all the time. Administrators tend to take it harder.
That's what
But you never see them. These are the faceless. Now I'm going to engage in what the Montreal Symphony did: shameless objectification. These are merely tools in an administrative cogs in an administrative machinery. Ooh, it hurts, right, when the shoe is on the other foot. And cultural products of an administrative culture that dehumanizes.
Okay.
And that, right, but that's here.
So how are you going to punish them?
Right, here's the thing. I would have been kinder if they'd have used this, because one of the things they could have done is they could have said, look, he's not playing because we fear you. And now I'm going to use this as a moment, as a teaching moment, to say it's on us, but it's on us precisely because there's nothing we can do about your inability to look deeply into yourselves and to try to figure out why it is that you are taking this out and dehumanizing this kid who has nothing to do with it. But they didn't do that.
Right.
They did none of this stuff. Right. And so from my perspective, then the Montreal Symphony ought to, punishment is, we can't do this merchant style. Let's get a couple pennies from them. You can't spank them. That's also not very helpful. No. But you can maybe require them to engage in public acts of rectification and public acts of dialogue with their audience, right? In collusion with whom they came to this decision. That would be hard. That would be embarrassing, but that would be the kind of rectifying punishment that they really deserve.
Oh, I like that.
So write them a letter and propose this. Actually, we should send them a copy of this podcast.
Yes.
Send it to Michael Tilson Thomas. Tell him I've loved him to death from the time I was almost in diapers.
No, I agree.
And I respect him a great deal, and he has probably had to have his mouth tightly closed. But send him a copy of the podcast. And if our podcast audience have an even nicer and more deliciously on point rectifying punishment that you can think of, write in.
Please, at parallelbarkingpodcast@gmail.com. Took me a minute to figure out to remember our email address.
Yeah. Not that we can help the kid in any other way. I mean, it'd be nice to interview him and see what he thinks, but that would be inviting him to fall in deeper, and you don't want to do this. I mean, the kids having
No,
enough of a set of problems to have you and me kind of,
poking the bear. No, we don't need to do
oh my
that.
God, you did it again.
I did
Who's
it.
the bear? The bear is Russia.
Yes,
You're poking the bear.
I did it.
Oh,
I'm so good. That pun is super intended.
good Lord. So any last words?
That was it. I'm going
All
to
right.
leave it at that pun.
Until next time, everyone.
Until
I
next
am Parallel Doggy One, woof woof, saying goodbye, and
Parallel Doggy 2 signing off. Thanks, everyone.
bye.